Meantime, we do have loads of listeners. Thanks for making it on the 23rd of December. I can imagine that loads of you are on holiday already. I'm at home with my entire family. Who have we got? We've got Cecilia. Hello. The others, do you want to just tell us in the chat where you are? Then we can see how many continents we've spanning. Because right now already we've got Jared in the US. I'm in Belgium, and then we've got our team in Sri Lanka. Pennsylvania, yeah, that's Jared. Cecilia, are you still in France or are you back in Madagascar? I'd love to know. And then Stanford, I feel like you've been in a call before. Cecilia's in France, but I don't remember where you are, Stanford. So if you do want to tell us in the chat, please feel free to do so. Aha. Hello, we have our team on camera. Hi, perfect.
Can you hear now?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you, which is brilliant.
Yeah, so this is Tilan.
Oh.
Taranga and Shamika.
That's Shamika.
We have two more joining in 2 days who just went out. They'll come back in.
Yeah, they're joining a minute.
Yeah, perfect. Great.
So I guess
is that?
We're having some. Yeah, looks like we're having a little bit of connectivity issues. There we are.
Yeah, we're back.
So we basically kind of shared a deck, just that maybe at some point we could use it if required. Sorry, we haven't gone through much of the program, but we covered a good part of it, but not most of it. But in terms of what Jared had done, we've gone through his section as well, so we can talk about the cards and just direct us how you want us to talk through it. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds really, really good. Don't worry. Yeah. I mean, again, the digital labs is what you make of it. Obviously, the more you engage with it, the more you will benefit from it, but it's entirely up to you how much you've been in and out. And that's why you now have the live session with Jared. Hello. And Jared will be able to lead you through the content that he wants and basically give you advice from the expert immediately. I'll just read out the countries that we have because we've got a good mix and we are really global today. We've got Pennsylvania, we've got Belgium, we've got Sri Lanka, we've got France, Turkey, Nigeria, and Uganda, which is really, really good. But I think with that, I'll say, well, hello to everybody who's joined us today for the session. Thank you for Jared for joining us and giving us an hour of your time and expertise. And to the team as well. Congrats on winning the live lottery and the session with Jared. And I'll let you get on with it then. I think, Jared.
Great. Thanks, Marie. Yeah, it's so great to see everyone on here. And team, thank you for being flexible for, last week I came down with the flu. So I appreciate you switching it to this week. So I always love to start off these calls with just a quick round of introductions. And since there's so many of you, maybe what we can do is I'll just quickly give my own background, and then maybe one of you or two of you could give me the background on FarmAgg and give me your 30-second to a minute pitch. Does that sound like a good starting place?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Cool. So Jared, I used to work at Thought for Food in a position similar to Marie. And before that, I actually had two of my own small agriculture companies, one in Kenya and then one in the US. Helped work with startups from all around the world, helping them everything from turning your idea into a reality to helping them to raise funding. After Thought for Food, I started working with Penn State University, which is one of the US's biggest schools, and helping them develop their entrepreneurship programs. And then more recently, I've started working for the Biomimicry Institute as their entrepreneurship director. So really kind of in this nexus of how do we support both cool technologies and the nature and organisms that inspire them. So that's a quick background about me. I would love to hear your FarmAgg pitch.
Sure. So I mean, just a very brief background of it is that we are trying to kind of get a digital platform to kind of get the last mile farmer onto a system. So one of the challenges we have in developing countries such as Sri Lanka is that most of the record keeping is still manual. So when we talk to international players or guys who have access to markets, especially in Europe and the western side of the globe, they need a lot of options to look at traceability and to look at the end farmer who benefits from their interactions. Unfortunately, one of the first things that we need to do is that we need to put some kind of digitization right at the farm level. And unfortunately, in countries like that, it's not, countries like Sri Lanka, it's not widely available. So our phone penetration is quite good, but smartphone penetration is around 30%. And smallholders being a lower income segment of the community, they generally don't have the tools to digitize their farms. So what we are trying to do is very simply kind of get a farmer aggregation engine, get smallholders into a platform first, and then start giving them the services they need, whether it's going to be adaptation of new farming technologies, better extension services, so on and so forth. There are a range of services that can come in, but all these service providers at the end of the day need to serve the farmer, and there has to be a digital tool to get the ground level moving. So that's pretty much where we are focusing as a starting point.
Great, fantastic. And how long have you been working on this?
It's close to about, so it's a funny story on how this actually came about. So I've been involved in a couple of startups and have about a 3-year experience in kind of a small fintech. Chalinda has been in the startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka for almost 10 years. We've been friends from school. Chamika, who's here, so we actually started a plantation project, and then we were supposed to do a outdoor model as well. When we needed to do that, there was no tool for us to kind of get the data or to engage them. So given our startup background, we thought it's best to kind of look at an option where we can do it ourselves. And that's how we kind of got the team in place. We've been doing this ideation stage for about 3 months. And we've kind of, then we had to decide, are we going to build the product internally or are we looking at kind of a thing that is already out there? So we visited a couple of agriculture conferences in the region and found that there are a number of players who have done very detailed farm management applications, and getting it on a kind of a software as a service module is much more cheaper for us than to do it ourselves. And they also, and so we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So we kind of got into that module, and then since like mid part of November, we've been customizing it for Sri Lanka's use case. And we hope to go to market around about February, March, if possible.
Awesome, fantastic. Yeah, it's always the best when you solve your own problem, right? Because that probably means other people have that problem too. So yeah, it's great to hear that you have background as entrepreneurs, and yeah, it's exciting. So good. And so it sounds like you have experience and you're underway. You're hoping to go to market here in the next few months. What do you see right now being like one of your big challenges and roadblocks in front of you?
So in terms of getting the offering and creating, so we basically have targeted one user, and Chamika, my partner, so we will turn the camera in a while. So he basically has been running his own kind of a tea farm with about 2,000 plus farmers. So one of the challenges we have is if you get digitization of coffee, the coffee value chains, etc., are well established, and there's a lot of use cases and stuff like that. If you take Sri Lanka's tea, we are the second largest exporter to the world.
And the world's number one tea, and Ceylon tea is supposed to be the best tea in the world as well. So it's a big industry here. It's a huge society.
So, unfortunately, even though the community, and we have about 600,000 farmers, smallholder farmers who are depending on that, and about 1.5 million families that are depending on tea income. Unfortunately, however, we generally don't think there is a fair value of the money coming into the tea farmers in our country. So that is one of the things that we want to kind of give as a in story. However, we are still kind of struggling it out. Coffee is an attractive thing to most players in the world. Tea, the story is not there yet. So getting a story right for us to market our product is one challenge. The second challenge is obviously, getting the implementation side, and it's going to be a long journey which we'll be going through and kind of reiterating, and that we are ready for that journey. But we also need a story to kind of get our end game right, and I think that's why we're interested in getting to go.
Got it. Okay, so just wanted to make sure we all heard. So whereas so coffee is the first, is that the first one that you're doing right now?
No, tea is
Okay, tea, sorry. Okay, so you were saying coffee.
So what I basically said is, if you take, coffee is not grown in Sri Lanka, but if you take South America's coffee growing story,
Got it.
there's a good story out there. But
Got it.
tea, unfortunately, is not so attractive for the wider world.
Yeah.
And that is want to kind of engage and bring them in.
What we're trying to say, tea is a big element here in the country. I mean, if you look at the country, I mean, the agriculture sector is big, in which tea is one of the biggest.
Uh-huh.
And the social impact of it in terms of number of people who are directly and indirectly involved in this industry is huge. And on the other side, tea the tea is a global commodity, and Sri Lanka is one of the largest players out there.
Yeah.
So how to get that story connected? I mean, there is a market out there. It's a big story, but then this value chain coming down to the tea growers or the pluckers or the farmers is not there. So as a result, today the impact of it in terms of financial and social, there's a huge problem out there. I mean, there's a huge gap, disconnect, which we're trying to create a value chain through this whole thing.
Yeah. No. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And is that where I saw on your website that you're working to help people get like the Rainforest Alliance, or that's one of your strategies certificate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that when we look at the chain of getting the farmers, produce go to a local tea auction, and that is the first place it kind of comes into a catalog and where buyers have access to. So there has been a lot of international buyers who approach the market. However, they need traceability coming into the ground level, and they want certifications and stuff like that. So one of the challenges in our market research is for smallholder groups or small tea factories to administer Rainforest Alliance certifications and stuff like that. So what we want to do is to kind of create very simple modules where the ongoing requirements are met, and for them to be offered on a stage-by-stage basis. So as I said, first thing is get a phone onto the farmer's hand, digitalize their farm, get them onto a platform, and then try to kind of upscale the offerings to this bit by bit.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. All makes a ton of sense. It's really interesting. So working with Thought for Food, we've seen a number of kind of aggregators like this in the past. And I think only a few that we've seen have stuck around, but they're sticking around for the same reason that you are. And I'm saying this as a positive way. Like, I think that you're honing in on the important thing of realizing you might not be able to directly serve the smallholder one-on-one, at least not yet. You're going to have to work through these like co-ops or groups or other like larger organizing certifications to go out there and reach them and help serve that customer. A great example is a group from Colombia called Cultivando Futuro.
Sorry.
Their name is Cultivando Futuro. Marie, either you or I or someone can try to help make an intro, but they're finding success similarly in helping to link up smallholders, but they're actually finding the government is paying them money, because by doing this process, they're able to understand like what sort of sanitation facilities do they have on site, how many farmers are there in this area, which is helping the government make informed policy decisions. So they're getting a lot of different government support and things like that, which you might also want to look into.
So funny case, when we actually had a couple of conversations, is that sometimes, so our local currency unit is called rupees,
Mhm.
Sometimes the agriculture extension officers make a trip to visit the farms and spend 500 rupees to give 200 rupees of advice, so to speak.
Yeah.
So something that they want to see if you can have video calls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the challenges though is that Sri Lanka's farming community is typically not youngsters. They are 45 years or older, so they are not tech savvy to use messaging groups and stuff like that. So we haven't. The feedback we got on the ground level was a little bit vary, but it's definitely something that online extension services is something that, as I said, since we're getting a backend that has a feature which we can roll out if the demand is there. Hopefully.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, because Cultivando Futuro had the same problem, and they actually discovered that they would identify the local ag supply, like the local seed supplier or fertilizer supplier. They would give them an iPad with the conditions of they would be the ones collecting that data. So they found it was cheaper, rather than doing all this marketing effort or sending one of their own staff out there, is just to give them like a smartphone or something like that and let them do it. So it was a really interesting for me to see, like, oh yeah, that sometimes you just need to give people access to the tools.
Right. So we came across this company called Ag Funder that has done that, I think. So, but they've got like a loan agency to support with the cost of the device.
Okay.
And then rolled out from that point onwards. But hopefully something that we can attract if we have a story line.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Yeah, I'm clear on kind of the target you're solving. I always listen for the customer, the problem, and then your solution. And I think you did a great job. And so how do you think, like, how can I best help you right now? Like, what questions do you have for me? What do you want to talk about? I'll let you kind of steer this conversation and where we want to go.
Sure. So one of the challenges that we face as a team is that our offering, if you take, is very wide in some states. Like we have to engage a farmer, we have to engage a tea factory, a processor, certification agency, etc., etc. So one of the challenges we found is, and we've been part of startups have also failed, right? So getting revenue money coming in is going to be a challenge. So we've identified like the interaction between a farmer and the processing plant or the factory. There is some value addition and they're willing to pay for it. The second part is we have to sell them something on a commission-based structure. So what is most widely available in the market is either financial service, basically things like insurance and stuff like that. But again, what we are having kind of internal discussion is what is our starting point and what to focus. I just want to get your idea on from a rollout perspective. Should we just focus on getting revenue on day one, or just get users in the first 2-3 months and then cut a story?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so many people have different views on that. If you go to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, they're going to tell you just to get users. I think in order to build a sustainable business, you should try to figure out a way to collect, gather revenue along the way. So
you could do that, but there is a lot of early stage funding. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we have to pay for your cost of device.
Exactly.
Not also widely available. Yes, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I was just saying, for you guys, but also for the people listening too, is if you read a lot of these like startup blogs and everything, is they'll just say, yeah, just get users. But I've just seen that's not necessarily a sustainable business model for most of the world, including where I live. And so, yeah, I think my recommendation would be somewhat similar to what you're already doing, trying to find groups who may pay you to achieve your goals. So let's say let's use Rainforest Alliance as an example. Let's say Rainforest Alliance wants to reach 5,000 more smallholders in the next 6 months. Can you work out a contract with them to, maybe you have to adapt your product a little bit, but I think if you can build it alongside of another group who has some financial backing, I think that would be really powerful. and also give you some validation for yourself as well. So I think that might be one recommendation. The insurance thing is really interesting as well. Is anyone in Sri Lanka insuring these smallholder farmers already?
So right now we have about 3 state insurance agencies and 2 private companies who are in the agriculture space. But the agri-insurance industry is at a very, very kind of, it's very crop specific. So you have rice, like paddy and maize and stuff like that are insured, but not many other crops. So one of the new products that the insurance industry has come out is with what is known as, can you insure rainfall and stuff like that. So it's not going to be the crop exactly, but you look at the weather aspects that suit a plantation and try to. So it's not like a full compensation, but a part compensation. And that is also where they need a lot of tech scenes, like, remote sensing data, weather stations link up and stuff like that. So again, something that we are trying to discuss with certain parties in Sri Lanka to do the offering. Insurance companies are definitely interested. However, when you come to the global market again, from a pilot perspective, they need at least 5,000, 10,000 users to kind of get in there. We are having some early discussions, but hopefully, but very early stages in terms of the offering.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there's another startup that came through Thought for Food called Climate Edge, and they're mostly working in Central and South America, I believe, but they have a very low-cost weather station. And because of kind of their climate, like it's very mountainous there. So one side of the mountain might be very different than the other side. And I know when I was working with them, they were exploring the insurance side of things as well. So again, that might just be another good conversation.
So I mean, in terms of like, it's something we will like. So for the low cost models, are there insurance companies that are willing to get that data and then write insurance policies in your experience, or do you think that they'll push for their own equipment and the high-end stuff? What has been your experience?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I quite heard your question. Were you asking like, would they provide the insurance or would they provide the data?
Yeah, so when we looked at the low-cost devices, one of the key aspects that we need is, can we get the insurance companies to use the data from the low-cost devices and give policies based on that?
Yeah.
Or will insurance companies move their own equipment service providers to come in?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's one of the tricky parts for sure. Yeah, if you're willing, again, I think that's another group that Maria or I could connect you to. I don't have much of a background there, but they could share their experience in working through that process. Interesting. Is there another? So I'm just curious. Like, so you mentioned ag extension agents in Sri Lanka, and they get paid, let's say 500 rupees to go out and visit farmers. Who is paying them for that work? Are they government funded? Is it NGO funded?
No, so most of the agri-extension services is done by what we call the Department of Agriculture. It's a government-owned entity,
Okay.
and they are in charge of the smallholder engagement. So, but in terms of what they said is why they would like a online extension service or a digital service provision is that the cost of travel, etc., is sometimes higher than the cost of the delivery.
Yeah. So
you go to the field just to offer a 500 rupee advice, but they may have spent almost 1,000 rupees on that day or $10 just to go around India.
Yeah. Do you have any contacts, or are any of you ag extension agents yourself?
No, but Chamika runs a tea factory, but they have their own kind of tea collectors and stuff like that who have the small engagement.
Okay.
But we haven't got the government involved in the project.
Okay. I'm curious. So, okay, you as a tea collector, yeah. I'm thinking here. So what kind of knowledge or skills or resources do you provide to the farmers, if anything, right now?
So as of now, what happens in the Sri Lanka case is actually, like Tilan mentioned, it's pretty much done by the government itself. Private producers and collectors, they have some sort of skill or knowledge going down through schemes like RFI, and at times very customized programs run by the individual factories or individual producers, but those are very small scale. I mean, the challenge here is how we get this. Get a model which can be adaptable to a larger community. I mean, today's context, if you ask me, it's pretty much done by the government, which is a program available through various ministries or departments. Yeah, and one other aspect is the fertilizer companies.
Yeah.
So fertilizer companies do their own sort of knowledge sharing and industry good practices, etc. So at times, again, coordinated by the factories and the producers and the collectors. So these are the two mechanisms available today. One is government, the other one is through private sector through the fertilizer input companies. I mean, input companies like fertilizers. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was just trying to think if there's a way to link into what's already happening. Was kind of the thought of that question. Okay. Yeah, this will be tricky because it's going to be so dependent based on your local context. I think the best I can offer is the strategies that I've seen work, and it's mostly been through Cultivando Futuro. And like I mentioned before, they did a great job of working with their local government, but also more kind of international think tanks, people like Fair Trade and other groups to help collect the data that would help them make decisions onto policies that they're going to roll out or programs that they're going to launch. So they almost position themselves a little bit as like a consulting group, but as a consulting group on the ground who could collect that data, and that allowed them to build out their platform.
So, I mean, in terms of what we've been working on, one aspect is that, because you said fair trade, right? So we're looking at kind of engaging, and Joshi handles our marketing side. So there are lots of buyers, let's say in Europe or in the US, who want kind of getting traceability options to the farmers, etc. But they want it at a scale and stuff like that. But you think, but it's right now an offering that we can add in, but it's not programmed to get the buyer engagement side. So we have the farmer to the producer, but we need a producer in consumer kind of mapping done. Will a platform like ours be of interest to those guys, or how can we make ourselves attractive, so to speak, to enter that arena? But so at least, for example, 1 kilo of tea for the farmer generally goes at about 80 rupees per kilogram of green leaf.
Rupees, yeah.
Yeah, that's less than half a dollar, 50 cents USD, just to get a context. But 1 cup of tea in any developed world is going to cost at least, a couple of dollars, so to speak. So there is no fair value that is transferring in, and there's a lot of consumers who know the story but don't have a mechanism. Are there any strategies that we can use as an aggregating platform to kind of connect our farmer bases directly?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear what you're doing or what you're thinking first. Are you already working on something in this space, or is this just kind of like an idea right now?
No, so we've been exploring one option. So like, as I said, insurance, insurance is very attractive to cover, and then with all the climate change kind of adaptation strategies, if it's something that is being pushed by NGOs, governments, etc. But then they want the farmer to pay the premium, which you generally, you're talking to another kind of excluded sector who can't actually afford it right now. So we've seen some use cases where the buyers actually coming to kind of a platform, they pay the premium on behalf of the farmers to secure. So it's basically like giving an advance order. That happen in coffee, etc. But tea buyers and stuff, we haven't actually gone. Our main focus is to get like 2 or 3 factories onboarded and then do that part of the story. But something that we want to do a little bit more. But I think Charmika will go better.
I mean, if you ask me, like Tilan mentioned, the pricing and as to what is going down to the farmer, And in terms of end market price versus farmer level income. So how do we, I mean, there is a huge middleman structure which is working today, and end of the day, the real benefits are not coming down to the communities down here. So the idea is, community-based value chain creation, and a model which can compensate the farmer, the ground level person, and in which how do we ensure these communities are sort of enriched and given a better social impact to it, as long as there is a platform to kind of get that traceability. So we are trying to create that platform, get someone, get people on board from the buyers end as well as from the farmers end on this side, and probably get the other value chain partners like the producers, the exporters, and other parties involved in the industry altogether.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm making it very directive questions, but just want to get some feedback.
Yeah, I mean, just give it to the background as is, so they know you understand where we're coming from, so they know it's kind of clear for you, rather than us just making.
No, I mean, it makes total sense, and I don't think I have the answer to that. I think it's a question a lot of people are asking. Like you mentioned, in coffee and chocolate and some other products, this is starting to become more accepted. You can have like the single batch coffee, exactly the farmer who grew it. And this same thing hasn't translated to tea yet, or to rice, or to some other products.
So one of the offerings that come with it is, blockchain-based solutions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So here we're trying to just get a digital phone to the farmer, and then blockchain is far. I mean, we're not there yet.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't want to jump right to like the digital solution, right? So it might be interesting to look to see, like, I'm sure that there's case studies out there, like how, someone has researched how this got started. And I just would be really like, is it as simple as, like, in my local town, we have this great great coffee shop that was started by a Colombian who moved here, and they sell their family's coffee in the middle of Pennsylvania. And that's how their farm got the boost. Like, it was just a one-person connection. And I don't know, like, I think that's just the tricky part, is really understanding what is going to drive then that final consumer. So, like, coffee shops work because they're a place where people kind of gather and hang out. Like, when people drink tea normally, I guess maybe they're not going to the same type of environment. I think it's I would just be curious to see what is motivating people, and if this would translate across products, if this would translate across produce. And a good way to do that, so one of the things I always like to recommend when we're feeling stuck like this, is take some time after this call to look for what we call like the golden goose or the golden egg example. So somewhere in the world, someone is probably doing this already and doing it really well. And if that just means like looking up like fair trade tea, or hey, I'm in Seattle, I'm in San Francisco, where can I get fair trade tea? All of a sudden you're going to start to see different places and different examples, and you can kind of just follow that value chain backwards. I think that might just be how I would recommend starting, and it might just give you some insight into the organizations and people and logistics that you might need to accomplish your goals, if that makes sense. I think that's the best I can help with that one. That's a really tough one. Yeah.
Do you see any strategies that you could implement, mainly because if you talk about the pluckers of the families, where the factory owners, as far as I know, the factory owners give their land to the pluckers, right, and their families to just settle and pluck. So in most of the cases, the women are the one who is going, like, are the main source of income. So if that is sort of like, do you have any strategies where you could inculcate the gender aspect, like, because the main income coming from the women, the mother, and sometimes they even carry babies and go for plucking. So do you see any strategies where we could justify their hard work? And most of the time, there are also cases where the male figure of the family are just like not much taking responsibilities, and they are just like and rather drinking from the wife's earned money, and then just like not doing anything at all. So sort of a problem where the government also can't provide to just justify the rate of salaries as for women.
Yeah.
Yes, on context, I think is mainly which was like the smallholder farmers or the small back garden kind of tea growers. I think it would be fair to say around about 80% of the labor force in tea at the ground level are all women.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. Like you carry a 20 kg payload on your back, and that's the story. But again, something that the buyers may not be aware of, which we want to kind of make the story.
Yeah. I think it's a really good thing to note. Most smallholder farmers are women around the world.
So is that like even if you take, for example, South America, where you work with those examples as well, is it like smallholder? Is it mainly women-driven smallholders that you've seen across it? But in Sri Lanka, we see that a lot in tea, but not maybe in the other agri sectors.
Interesting.
But you know about the others globally.
Yeah. I think we have such a good global group. They can put things in the chat. I would be curious to hear what they say. I definitely noticed that when I was working with smallholders in Kenya. And Marie, I think probably from your work, you probably have seen that too. So I think statistically, women make up most of the smallholder farmers. There's another good group, and I can send through all the URLs. I'll send them to Marie, or she can link us up afterwards, called, I think it's Kaiafi Coffee Farmers. They're from Uganda. And they are all about supporting women who have been victims of domestic violence to grow coffee. And then they've created this really great connection to the US to sell that coffee. I think they were even an Obama Fellowship winner. And they came through Thought for Food. But there might be another interesting model for, they've been able to really help support these at-risk women do their livelihood in a better way and make fair wage from that. So she's a wonderful founder. I think her name's Elizabeth, the founder there. So I can try to connect you to her as well.
And in terms of like your experience in Kenya and stuff, so if the food startup kind of, so one of the challenges that I find, which may be common in such developing countries, is that there are more actually donor-related funding than investor-related funding for startups in the food sector. And I mean, so the pitching story for them, we basically not engaged in the kind of the donor communities, etc. So on that, how do we pitch our story for both ends?
Yeah, the funding story is always a fun one, because you're definitely going to have an advantage because of your experience. I think all of your experiences will help give you a leg up.
But being in Sri Lanka, do you see that as an advantage or disadvantage in terms of countries? Yeah,
I mean, geography is always tricky. If you're a tech company, people are going to say, even if you took a 2-month trip to San Francisco, you might be able to secure funding much easier than if you just stayed in Sri Lanka, but it might not be the type of funding that you'd want. And I think this is where I always like to really focus people in on, is in startups, we oftentimes think like the holy grail is getting that investor to give us a cash infusion, forgetting that they're going to take ownership of the company. And what you're really looking for is a business partner who you want to bring on to do that with. So whenever you're thinking about fundraising, is think about it from the standpoint of who is a person I want to go into business with, and who can help me grow the company. So
and
I think
you
that.
mentioned one earlier chat. You basically said that look, one of the maybe to look at talking to guys like Rainforest Alliance, if you can give them 5,000 kind of farmers, are there incentives, etc. How do they get involved in food accelerators and stuff like that? And how is the best way to kind of approach that kind of mechanic?
Yeah. So I think my first recommendation is always try not to raise funding is my first suggestion. Try to make money based on doing projects and things, because it's all coming into your company then. You're not losing anything. So that's always the first thing. I think a second thing for a group like you, because you are a food technology company that's solving a global challenge, like you're solving in Sri Lanka first, but this could also be more of a global solution as well. I think an accelerator program might be a good fit for you. And then it's just trying to figure out which one. There's a number of them. I'm trying to think of some good digital ag. So Rockstart Accelerator in Amsterdam is a really good one for ag tech solutions. I'm sure there's a number in Singapore. Bits and Bytes is one. They're a little bit farther along, but they work in Southeast Asia and China primarily. So that might be a really good one, and they help you break into the Chinese market, which can sometimes be difficult if you're not inside the country itself. So yeah, I think there's a number of good ones. There's a number in the US, but they're usually so focused on the US market or the European market that it might not be relevant. So that's a really good step, because they're going to specifically prepare you for raising funding. If you think that is the route you want to go, the accelerator's whole job is to help get you funding. But yeah, then you mentioned like the donor advised funds and more like the philanthropy side.
So in terms of like, for example, the TFF program, what exactly, I mean, if you're going to pitch in our this thing, what do you think is attractive in our this thing, or what are the disadvantages of like having a farm aggregation engine towards, so we've kind of brainstormed internally. So what we kind of looked at is, even though like, let's look at the nutrition component of the tea families, right? So they're based on like a low wage industry, which affects their food consumption as well. So maybe for us to kind of collect data of the kids, children and stuff like that, and maybe kind of make us, so we've kind of, while following through the kind of the thought process that you all have put on the labs, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, Mary in the chat just suggested, which is a great suggestion, looking at groups who support women smallholder farmers, and even like in the healthcare space. I think there's a number of government programs, grant programs that support both nonprofits and for-profit businesses that work in this space. And yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion, Mary. Yeah. And I think that goes along with what you were saying right there too. Like following through, like how do you align with the UN SDGs and providing a safe food, safe livelihood, things like that.
We are targeting some of the SDGs.
Care model, the business partner. Yeah, I'm curious what Mary said, and a business partner to facilitate international exports to leverage. Yeah, I mean that's a big one too. Is going back to some of our other conversation is, do you have an international, like could you work with an exporter? Like are there any exporters currently in Sri Lanka that you know and you could work with to try to rebrand their products and maybe have like a premium version that they could try to sell or something like that?
Yeah, so the challenge we have is that most of our produce there is very limited value add that happens here. It goes in bulk form. Yeah. So buyers would actually be more like businesses that buy and repackage outside Sri Lanka. So
yeah,
we're looking at but it's beyond our scope right now to kind of concentrate on the product offering. Lots of new companies that are doing it, which we want to be a kind of a service provider.
Got it.
I mean, creating the value chain from the market and then connecting it down to the farm, and then sort of how do you get that money or the monetary term, and then that whole ecosystem working together is a question, and then that's something actually we're trying to enable here. So the question is whether to look at the end market and work it downwards or work it backwards. Do you think that kind of approach would help? I mean, say you find a buyer, like you said, or probably an exporter, who again will find us a buyer in a market, in an end market where he's willing to come on board, and then work it backwards to sort of replicate it with multiple partners. That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know which would be like the right approach to do. I think again I would recommend looking at like how does this oftentimes get started in like coffee or another industry, and just kind of follow that model. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I don't have enough expertise there to help answer that one.
Yeah. Just want to so we've kind of done a very listing on your startup gut stuff. So just
yeah.
Can you give us some guideline of how we can best use your structure to kind of the one of the things that we find as a challenge that we have so many thought processes, but we are not so organized in putting it into structured models.
Yeah.
So we kind of, thanks to this, it was quite interesting to kind of go through many parts, but we'll do it as a team later on as well.
Yeah, sure. I have mine here. I created this because I found myself asking the same questions to people over and over again. And I figured if I'm doing that, probably other people are doing it too. So each card has a question on it. And essentially what you can do is you can put aside the pink cards to start. The pink cards are if you're developing a pitch. So if you're working on a pitch, then start with the pink cards. Otherwise, you can put those to the side. And then I just recommend starting with the orange cards. So the orange cards are what I call like your core building blocks. So you're probably familiar with the business model canvas. I kind of view them as similar to the business model canvas. They're slightly adapted. And I would just recommend going through and having deep conversations about each one of these orange cards and making sure everyone on your team is aligned with that. And then the blue cards, you can match up the symbol and have some even deeper conversations there. And oftentimes what I find when I work with people is you can answer the orange cards. You've thought a lot about the orange cards. It's the blue cards that sometimes you get stuck on. So then it's you're up to you as a company to figure out how to prioritize answering those questions. And you might not figure it out for up to a year. You might decide that this question isn't relevant to us. But I think as someone who might give you money as like an investor, or if you're pitching a startup to someone like Thought for Food or whatever, these are all questions that they are going to ask at some point. So you need to have an answer to that. So my recommendation is, internally, use it as a tool to align your team. Externally, bring in the pink cards and you can start forming your pitch around everything there.
And in terms of, like as you mentioned about identifying certain aspects, so we have some experience on the commercial front, maybe even with commercial level investments on the startup side. But when it comes into the impact level kind of, so we find that we've spoken to a couple of agencies, the UNS, which have certain programs. They say that maybe one of the feedback is we may have our pitch wrong because the impact story has not been sold exactly. So, in terms of looking at developing that aspect, are there any kind of advice you can tell us on what areas to focus? For example, it's but the basic thing is commercial side is about getting the revenue, business model, etc., right? But from an impact perspective, analysis, do you have any exposure to share maybe?
Yeah. because I'm similar. I come from the startup business background, and now I've been working more in nonprofits, and I've been learning a lot. So I think there's two big things that you probably already have. You're just using the wrong name in the impact side. So one is called a theory of change. Have you heard that before?
One of our advisors just spoke about it from the UN, that to focus on theory of change.
Theory of change, and then logic model. So both of those are things, if you're working in the environmental or impact space, you're going to want to have. And there's a lot of good resources out there online. Honestly, theory of change I find to be somewhat similar to like a value proposition. You're just explaining about why you're doing what you're doing. So if you think about it, theory of change, this is why we think we need this to happen. And then the logic model is kind of your step-by-step process on how you're doing that. The other big thing that you're going to want to consider is the difference between outcomes and outputs. So outputs would be the number of people you serve, the number of people you reach, how much tea is sold, things like that. Your outcomes would be more of the impact that's causing. So the outcomes are we've helped X many farmers get out of poverty. We've helped reduce the rate of malaria by X amount, things like that. Which actually that would be an output still, because it's just a number. It would be by reducing the amount of people with malaria, they've been able to make this much more money. They've been able to go to this much more school, things like that. So I think oftentimes as kind of social entrepreneurs, we focus just on the output number, but we forget we're doing this for people. So what is that human story that you can tell alongside that? Yeah, that was a great question. Anything else from you guys?
Yeah, I think we are more or less all right. So just, yeah. So I mean, in terms of, just want to get some overview of the food, the TFF accelerator for food, like what exactly, like for example, what the accelerator will be looking for, especially from like coming from a Sri Lankan background, is geography of interest, or is there anything that we can kind of put in this, that question? So we thought since we have time, maybe we can put that too as well.
Of course. Yeah. So I'll let Marie answer some of that. I'll just say in general, there's usually three things that I say I look for when like I'm evaluating accelerator applications or things. And then Marie can maybe speak a little bit more towards thought for food specifically. But first thing I always look for is your understanding of the problem and the people. And I think you've demonstrated that very clearly here, but how well do you understand the customer and the user that you're serving and the problems that they're struggling with? The second one follows up on that, and it's about your solution. And within that solution, what is your traction? So we need to make sure that you're solving the problem. That's like the first thing that a lot of people do wrong. Well, the first thing a lot of people do wrong is they don't have a specific problem. The second thing people do wrong is their solution doesn't match the problem. And it's very clear that they came up with a solution before they started interacting with the customers. And then the third thing we always look at is the team. And so much of that is just how do you come off in your videos? Are you excited? Are you, does your team work well together? Can we see you working well together? And then your experience, of course. So those are the three things I look for right away. And then Maria, I don't know if you want to mention anything else from Thought for Food.
Yeah, sure. So what Jared said is also what we look for. On top of that, so you asked about geography. We are completely global. We've got teams now from over 135 countries. So, we're the more the merrier. So there's nothing in terms of geography. What we look for as well, so what we judge teams on as well is how innovative is your solution, because we really want to find things that are new, thinking outside the box, implementing some great new technologies, new ideas that we haven't seen before. We also look at the scalability of the solution. So is it something that can be implemented on a large scale, or that can be built out to reach as many people as possible? But really, I mean, like Jared said, his last point was teams. We are really interested in the teams. And one thing, I don't know who said it, and I must really find out, but someone in the TFF now in the challenge has said, you know, all ideas are moldable, but you've got to have the right team. And so that's really the big one. And then in terms of, you know, the challenge and how we find you as well. So obviously the more you interact with, especially me, because I'm the person who looks after the teams, that's how I get to know you, which is great. But obviously that's not what you judged on at all. That's just how beforehand I can find out what you do and how we can support you best. Right, so right now I learned a lot about your solution that I didn't know before, so that's really good. And now, for example, we just found out that Cultivando Futuro might be a good kind of link for you. So I wouldn't have known this if we hadn't talked to each other. So my role is to support teams in this way. So get in touch with me that way. And then what you can also do, so you will have received an email a few days ago about the early pitch submission. So that is a chance for you to submit a pitch by the 5th of January. And the first 100 pitches will get reviewed and you'll get feedback. And then, so before you submit your final pitch, late January. So that's something you can tap into as well, where you will get feedback from us directly on what you've put together. So that's something that's really good to tap into, to kind of get extra feedback for you before the big final submission.
Cool. So you mentioned, like, you know, in innovation, is it pretty much like a tech-focused innovation, or do you look like innovative business models for implement? So, for example, let's say, you're looking at something that has worked outside in a different industry. For example, let's say coffee, and we're using kind of a method to introduce that into an industry that has not adapted. Is that something that you would consider innovation, or you are like looking at deep tech kind of solutions?
Yeah. Oh no. What you've described is perfect. We're not tech focused. Tech is great, and it enables a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that that's, you know, what we look for especially. So for example, the Coating Plus team that won the TFF prize last time, they were looking at a coating for foods that made it more nutritional and last longer. So there was no kind of tech or AI involved in that at all. So no, that's absolutely fine. And we look at everything along the food chain as well. So from kind of production and growing crops all the way to reducing waste at the end, reusing products, making your idea more circular. These are things that, yeah, anything along there is what we look for, anything along the food system.
So I just want, we haven't gone through all your learning labs at the moment, so we've just kind of was picked up after the FSVP submission. So are there any kind of like certain code, like, or any module which we haven't actually come across it yet, on what you want, like a checklist for the pitch deck, etc., that you want, or is it can be like a generalized thing that will be looked up?
Yeah.
Is there a pitch deck? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So you can do several things. So for one thing, you have the participant toolkit. That was done a little while ago, so that outlines what we want. And then there's also so if you go on the digital labs, if you go on the top right corner where it has your team name, it has a little button now that says pre-submission. If you click on there, you get taken to the form, and there you can see as well. You can just scroll through the form and see what it says without submitting. There you'll see exactly as well. It'll be the same as in the participant toolkit, but it'll tell you the questions we're asking for and how long your answers should be. So we have a word limit or a sentence limit for everything. So you will be able to see that from there as well. There was a question there in the chat as well. Should the team be in the same town from the applicant country? So you can be anywhere. We have many teams that are international, so that's not a problem at all. And I hope that answers that question. Great. Was there any other thing?
Cool. I was just going to mention, I just dropped a lot of links in the chat. So for you guys and also the attendees listening, they'll probably disappear after we hang up the call. So you might just want to open up all those links right now. Pro tip, Zoom sometimes deletes all your links. I've run into that problem.
No, for sure. Great shout. But there will be a recording of the call with the notes as well. So that's not a problem, but yes, do click on them now. Let's talk about the members of the team. So BDJ, I'm trying to understand your question. You were talking about the members of the team. Should the members be in the same town from the country? So again, not a problem. As long as, you know, you have to make it work. Even if you're stretched across the globe, that's fine for us. As long as you can work together, that's absolutely fine. And if anything, you know, it's great when you have different cultures coming together, different people from different places, different viewpoints. You can just have the discussions can be so much more fruitful.
And I was just going to make one recommendation. I do think it's important that your team at least understands the local consumer or customer or user that you're solving a problem for. So maybe you don't live in the same country, but maybe you've spent time there, or you have someone on the ground who you can work with. I think that is really important to have some kind of local context, if that's what you mean as well. But
yeah, thank you, Jared.
Cool.
Great. So
well,
I think
this was really good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a lot. Really excited to see how you continue to move forward. I'm excited that you're all working on this together. Feel free, Marie, you can share my email if they don't already have it with them, and happy to connect with you guys on LinkedIn or whatever too. So let me know how I can help along your journey. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jared.
Yeah.
FarmAgg, do you want to have some last words?
No, we are good. Thanks for the opportunity, and happy that we got the lottery to get into this chat. So we will try to contribute as much as possible in the system, and then try to spread the word to some of our guys in the ecosystem here as well, to kind of maybe have a go at it also.
Perfect. Great. Well, thanks for joining us on the call, and happy holidays and happy working on your solutions to everybody. All right. So,
Great.
bye everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.